Mr. Fuller.
Good evening, Sandip.
Mr. Fuller, Kalimpong is really happy to see you back. How do you feel? How does Mr. Fuller feel coming back to Kalimpong?
Well, I feel very happy because Kalimpong is like a second home to me, apart from the homes. But I can see that it's more or less the same, except that people have got newer ideas, and that makes it a very interesting place. And I'm sure that as the future rolls, a better future will roll for Kalimpong.
Do you see any changes since the days you were here and now?
Except for the flags that have changed as I came into town, that's what I noticed. Otherwise, I think more or less it's the same. Because I've not been very much around town, I've not had time, but in due course I will.
Mr. Fuller, you were principal of Dr. Graham's Homes for quite a long time. I'm sure you must have had a lot of pleasant memories there. Could you share some of it with our viewers in Kalimpong?
Well, Dr. Graham's Homes was in fact my learning ground for administration, and the experience that the homes carries in itself is a great teacher, and the people who are there, who were there, have built that upon a tradition, and I think that tradition and the ethos that propels it will keep on propelling it as long as the right people are there to recognize that and carry it forward. But personally for me it was a challenge to take up the responsibility as headmaster first and then as principal, and children have been very dear to my heart because I have studied in Darjeeling and Mount Herman, so I was used to this place. I had worked also for some time in Mirik, but when I came to the homes I realized that children and people from all cultures could mingle and live happily together and learn from each other, not only as students or teachers but genuinely from each other. And the staff there were, I think, some of the most excellent staff I've ever met, because the challenges that they met from the children that came to the homes were very varied and required skills that had to be drawn from experience, right? And the staff came out with flying colors each time. They had to deal with any situation that came their way, whether it was academic or whether it was a question of conduct or whether it was a question of emotional disturbance. And there are a few things that we did together that has proved, such a great boon to empower children. One of the things I think we did was to introduce the first school, first ICSE school in the country, in fact, to introduce class 9 streaming. The arts, commerce and science was introduced, and I think that liberated children and empowered them to pursue subjects that they liked. And when a child pursues the subject that he or she likes, naturally the performance is going to be better, their confidence will grow, and their respect for their teachers who teach them the subject will grow, because they know that what the teacher says is divine to their knowledge. Rather than giving a child something the child doesn't want to learn, because the child doesn't like the subject, he starts disliking the teacher. See? So, and this has paid off in the homes, because there are many children who used to drop out, and this saw that the level of failures were less, and more children were going into ICSE, and once they passed the hurdle of ICSE, they sailed through ISC. That was, I think, a good thing, and the credit goes to the staff.
So this was as far as academics and Dr. Graham's is concerned. But we in Kalimpong no longer think of Dr. Graham's Homes as just a school. We think it is part and parcel of our heritage in Kalimpong.
It is very much so.
The history of Kalimpong and the history of Dr. Graham's Homes is interlaced in every way.
Definitely.
Is enough being done in Dr. Graham's Homes to protect this heritage? things being done in a way in which the heritage is protected?
You see, at that very time, it has always been the endeavor of the people in the homes, or the people who are interested in the homes and who have a stake in the homes. It has been the endeavor to preserve the culture, the traditions. As you know, the homes have their own language,
Yes.
you know. So it's very few schools you find that, and that natural bonding that you have amongst the homes. Very, very few schools. As a matter of fact, in my whole experience as a student and as a teacher, as a principal, I have not come across this kind of bonding that come across in the homes. And one of the things that was done to preserve the heritage and to give a continuity to whoever comes afterwards was to open and inaugurate that centenary museum in the year 2000. That gives a perspective to the newcomer also as to what was
Yes.
and what it is now, and how to look forward and how to improve things, because the future is only molded from what is present and from the past.
That's true.
Right? So once you give a new staff member or a child who comes into the homes that perspective, they get a historical perspective. Then they begin to ask questions.
Yes.
Then the characters of the past come alive. You know, so and so studied here, and so on. And then things make sense to them. And then this same thing is imbibed in them, and they carry that culture, that tradition forward.
Another thing, sir, I mean, I think due recognition hasn't been given to Dr. Grahams, the person, because history says, and all of us who've been students of history know that he is practically the founder of Kalimpong. He definitely founded Dr. Graham's Homes. He was also, I think, the third principal or headmaster of SUMI, and he practically founded Kalimpong. But we see that enough recognition isn't been given to Dr. Grahams. Why is it so?
Enough recognition from which quarter are you
From
talking?
all quarters. I mean, it is
You have to be more specific
yes.
as to which quarter.
From every quarter, in the sense from the town, because the first initiative should come from the Dr. Graham's Homes to project Dr. Grahams, the person, as the founder of Kalimpong. We in Kalimpong feel this projection hasn't actually come in adequate measures from Dr. Graham's Homes, the school.
In very many ways, yes, definitely Dr. Graham has established a school, he has established a center of learning, which was very important, and the ideas that came in from the people who came to teach there,
Yes, sir.
and from the people who did commerce with the homes, definitely helped to build the town.
Yes.
Now, as far as the history of Dr. Graham is concerned, every student, every teacher who has an interest in Dr. Graham's Homes definitely know who Dr. Graham was,
Yes.
because that is something they fondly refer to him as Daddy Graham.
Yes.
You know, even new staff members, after a few weeks or months of teaching, automatically they also learn to address him as Daddy Graham.
Yes.
You see, that's something that you will not find in many other. But it all depends upon what is the focus when you talk of people or a particular section not giving Dr. Graham his due or recognition,
Yes.
so to say. It all depends. See, the world is a cell world. It's a cell world. You got to sell your ideas.
It's,
Unless you speak about it, unless people see it, right? Only then they are going to form an impression. They will know this person did exist. And unless you put the literature of that person, yeah, this is what he did, only then are they going to know that this is what he did, and then they will realize, maybe they will emulate him, right? And they'll draw inspiration from him. So it depends upon individuals to carry this forward.
yes. Okay, sir, enough of Dr. Graham's Homes. Tell us of your journey from a student in Mount Hermans to the deputy secretaryship of ICSE
That
school.
would be a very long story.
In a nutshell. In a nutshell.
But anyhow, yeah, in a nutshell,
It should be a very interesting story.
yeah, as a matter of fact, my 2 years in Darjeeling were really days that liberated my mind, opened my mind. And what I was as a student in school and after 2 years of schooling, I was a completely different person. My thinking was completely different. My teachers who knew me for 11 years in school couldn't accept the fact that after 2 years that I could think differently.
Okay.
So that was something that I have cherished. And there was one teacher that I had, and he always told me that never accept the truth as the truth. Question it.
Till you're proved wrong.
And that has somehow been an anchor to what I do. And that is why when I see something, I like to improve upon it if there is scope for improvement. Whatever it is. If a vase is kept on a table, if I find aesthetically it is not set correctly, I may just shift it aside. You see? So with that kind of attitude, and I became a teacher because of a calling. It's not that I didn't have a job or whatever. This is what I wanted to do. So I went in for that, and having gone into it, it was a passion. It was a passion. And after that, I went away. I taught very briefly in Delhi. I was in Mussoorie for 2 years. I will not name the schools.
Yes.
Mussoorie for 2 years. Then I went to Mirik for a year. Then I was in Lucknow for 17 years. And I think that the teaching skills and the organization of teaching in the live classroom, I learnt more there. In those 17 years, I was able to consolidate the process of what teaching is all about, and the learning teaching process. And I learnt the professional tricks, so to say, of being a better teacher. And then, of course, I was called for the interview for headmaster. And it was my luck, my fate, that I was destined to come to Kalimpong. It was as if my spirit was born in these hills, and seeks to come back. It's like that with me. And then I went away. I was here for 7 years, partly as headmaster, 6 years as principal, and it was one of the most satisfying periods professionally for me, because the work that we did in the homes, the teachers and myself that we did with the students, and the product that went out, that gave us satisfaction to see that these children were confident enough to go out and take their place in the world and carry on higher education and so on. So this was one of the highlights of my professional career, and I cherish that, because the people that I met in Kalimpong, the staff, the students, and the people in the town that I've mingled with and met and exchanged ideas with, this has enriched me. It has enriched me. I have got back more than what I had given this town, as a matter of fact. And that is why, though I'm away from Kalimpong, I went away to Calcutta, now I'm in Delhi, but my heart belongs here. It's always, I always keep on thinking of all of the faces that are familiar come into my mind, and I recall conversations, I recall where we sat sometimes, and what we did, the meetings, and so on. And then after that, I did a brief stint of 3 years in Calcutta. It's the second oldest school in India, established in 1759. It was a great challenge to work in Calcutta because the setup was completely different. It was an all-boys school. Luckily, I had the experience of teaching in an all-boys school in Lucknow, so that stood me in good stead. But this school was a very tough school, so to say, because it was near the docks. And any dock area in any part of the world is a very rough area.
It is.
Very rough characters. And the children who come naturally are drawn from the area primarily, and then of course from other parts of town. And what I learnt there about the dynamics of public dealing with the parents and with the staff and all,
Mhm.
is quite different. The skills needed there were quite different to the skills that are needed here. So that was also a great learning experience for me. Then I said, let me find out what's on the other side of the fence. I did a stint briefly in a Cambridge school, and I found that the Cambridge, their curriculum is more a thinking curriculum, makes you think much more than any Indian curriculum that I have taught or studied or have read and discussed. Makes you think. So after that I thought, let me go into the council and see, and this post was advertised, and I had this experience with me. I was the convener of Kalimpong
Yes.
for both ICC and ISC in those days, and I had very able principals,
Yes.
very able principals who ran schools, and as a convener, we did what we did for Kalimpong and the students of Kalimpong. So that helped me. That then when I went to Calcutta, I was convener of a zone. Calcutta is a very big
It's
place.
amazing.
So I had about 47 schools under me as a convener, just for ICSE, that is. So all these things gave me an added advantage. I was a principal, I was a teacher. So the council thought, here was a man who has the experience of the school background. So my endeavor there is to make procedures simplified for the schools, because we, the council, are our students, our teachers and our principals and the schools.
Yes.
We are just an examination body, but we cease to exist if we don't have our schools.
That's true. That's true.
Right? So we are trying to endeavor to make communication speedy, transparent and effective, because that is what is needed. Because children, unless there is knowledge and instant knowledge, they're not empowered. Because missing a date, one date also can make a big difference.
It does,
Sitting for an entrance examination or whatever, or declaring results also. If you declare it late, then the children of your board are not empowered, because they miss out on the good universities.
That's true.
Because your board is declared the results so late that other boards have declared early and other children have gotten.
Yes.
So that's our endeavor, to empower all the children who sit for examinations. And as long as we are with that aim, with that ambition, I think things will work out.
So now that you are the joint secretary,
Deputy secretary.
Deputy secretary of the ICC board, do you plan to make any changes there? Would you like to suggest any changes to the board?
We are not suggesting, we are already thinking. We have many plans on the anvil. It will be improper for me to speak on that, but I can tell you that our endeavor is first to make our curriculum relevant to the times. You will find in the 2011 curriculum for ICSC there are large sections that have been revamped in all subjects. There are certain subjects we are thinking of dropping also, because they are redundant. They're redundant because we have to cater to the times, to the need, to the future. Because what is relevant today is not relevant tomorrow. So that is what we are looking at.
Okay. There's a general feeling, sir, amongst almost everyone in the economic world, that ICSC prepares students more, to be economists for the MNCs, but not for the civil services, for the UPSC examinations. How far do you think this is true?
See, primarily there is one difference. The ICSC education has a very strong English background. The medium of instruction is English.
Yes.
And those who pass out from the ICSC schools have this advantage over other boards. And that is why you find them being picked up into the corporate world, into the MNCs as you call it. Because the world has shrunk. the world has shrunk and the international language is English. Right? And therefore you find our children are being placed into the MNCs because they have the communication skills that are needed for the job. There's nothing else.
Okay. So another thing I want to ask you is, in the hills, so the majority of the schools are ICSC, whereas of the English schools, in the plains, majority of the English schools are from the CBSE board. Why do you think this sort of thing is happening?
It is a question of infrastructure.
Yes.
It is a question of logistics, and it is a question of being a government organization or a non-government organization. You will find that most CBSE schools, the central board is a government organization by itself. So the common man thinks a central certificate is much better than any other examination. Even if you put the Cambridge IGCSE and the A levels, they may not comprehend it.
Okay.
Because they say, yeah, this is a government run examination, so it's a good one, it's certified all over. That is one difference. The second difference is that the CBSE has a great logistical backing because they have regional offices and of course they have a much more number of schools than the ICSE board. Then in the end what counts is quality. What counts is whether you are preparing the student for the future. You can prepare students to take on jobs or you can prepare students to be leaders. And there's a dearth of genuine leadership in this whole world, leave alone this country. So in our schools we endeavor, it's not that the CBSE schools don't endeavor. Most of the CBSE schools, they are rank and file schools who give an education and a pass. But the better schools have been there and they've been established schools for very long, ever since the inception of the ICSE and ISC board. There have been schools there. We are 50 years now of this particular board. And all the schools who existed at that time are still with us.
Yeah.
For one or two may have left for a few reasons, but 90% of them are still with us. That shows that there's nothing wrong with the board. But on the other hand, you will find CBSE schools converting to ICSE. But as our appeal grows larger, as we are understood on a better level, by better information probably, I'm sure the schools will grow in number, and as we grow in number, definitely we will try and improve the quality of education and everything.
So there's another, I've been talking to a couple of institutions. My job is that. So there's a general feeling among all the teachers, heads of school, as well as the students, that the ICSE examination, which I held in February, March, they should be shifted to November, December. That is, I think, pre-82, that was now it is February, March. So how much weightage do you give to this?
If the universities shift their intake of students to, let us say, March, February or March, then it makes sense to start in January and finish off in December. But since all universities across India, they admit children only after June onwards. So it does not make sense to hold an examination in December and keep the children sitting idle. Because some of them may want to discontinue studies in the meanwhile. They'll pick up a job maybe in a call center and be very happy with that. And they will discontinue studies. Whereas if the time lag is as short as possible, the concentration on studies is still there. the motivation is still there. And you can motivate the child to just cross the bridge, so to say.
Okay.
Otherwise it becomes a chasm, you see, which the child may have to jump over. It becomes difficult.
But then, sir, there is another side of the coin. Probably that would give a longer time for the students to prepare for the, for the next examination or for the civil services or wherever they want to sit.
See, in our very system that you have,
Sir.
a student who is better informed knows that he or she wants to join this competitive examination. So he or she will definitely study so much as to get a good pass in the examination. The rest of the time they are spending preparing. They are spending, in fact, 4 years sometimes in preparing, right from class 9. They know where they want to go. So they do as much as possible to go through the examination. And they pass. But at the same time, they have got the target and they have been preparing for it. So I don't think, having a gap of 6 months is going to enable them greatly.
So another thing, the present system of education in India, the 10 plus 2 plus 3 concept. Don't you think this is obsolete now in today's world?
Why do you say that?
Well, because I think a better system would be 10 plus 2, then you go directly, there's no graduation system sort of. You specialize from class 12 onwards.
See, you may think it's an obsolete system.
Yes.
And
But,
there are different schools of thinking.
Yes.
There's one school of thinking that opines that you start in class 1 and you have the exam in class 12. There's no intermediate examination
Nothing
at all.
as such.
Right? So that's a school level, they say. And then you go on to the next level, into university.
Yes.
But I think this system that we have acts in many different ways for different purposes. One is, when you have an examination at class 10, if you've done education,
So,
and there's something called wastage and stagnation, you will find that the majority of students, they stop at 10 and they don't continue. And this 10 plus 2 plus 3 also acts as a filter. Those who really have the heart, the mind and the aptitude to continue into the next level of education and the next level and so on. If you're going to have an examination, say after 12 years, at the end of 12 years you're going to discover that these children would have been better guided if they had some sort of assessment 2 years prior, so that their abilities towards a particular stream of their choice or their aptitude could have been taken at that stage, rather than they've come so far and then they have to go back, retrograde, so to say. So I think this is a valid system, that it helps us to automatically, it acts as a filter, a selection process, because not everybody is academically inclined, right? There are many people who are kinesthetic. They want to use their hands, their body. For that, you don't need a degree.
that's true.
You can be a star football player, you can be a star actor,
True, sir.
right? Because they use their body. So a streaming at that level, at class 10 we discover this, then okay, you go to sports college. At that stage, rather than go to 12 and then discover and then try and train him, maybe too late. So I think it's a relevant system.
Okay. Yes, tell me one thing. You've had experience in teaching in both the plains as well and the hills. What, in your view, is the basic difference between students studying there, their attitude, they look out towards education, and the students here?
One very, very fundamental distinction comes up is that on the plains, the children are more informed. The competition is so high, the pressure on the child is so high, because in his house he is told your cousin is in the same class, he is getting so many more marks than you. Or your cousin is in this school, he's getting so many more marks. So the pressure is on the child. So there is more access to educational remedial teaching, so to say. One. There is more access to your particular field of study on the plains. Whatever you want to specialize in.
Yes. More opportunities.
You can go to libraries, whatever. Even though you have the internet, it has, collapsed the world inside out, so to say.
True.
But still, you need people to guide you. You need institutions to guide you. You need study circles. These things are more readily available on the plains than on the hills. The children on the hills are more sheltered. The children on the plains, they are facing a stiff competition on a day-to-day life. They know what's happening. It's a question of being more informed. That's all.
Okay. And so,
but given the same level of education, the children of the hills are as smart as the children of the plains.
Okay. So this was about
children of the plains may be a little more city smart. They would know how to use the tube or whatever. But otherwise, education-wise, they have the same aptitude, the same abilities. It's just that the opportunities are greater there than on the hills.
I asked this question again, changing one word. I asked the difference in outlook between students there and here. Now I ask the same thing about teachers. Do you find any difference between the teaching staff there and the teaching staff here?
Definitely. The teaching staff on the hills are a more dedicated lot.
Okay.
More dedicated. Not to say that there are no dedicated teachers, but I'm talking as a community. You take any particular school, if you take school A and school B, one on the hills, one on the plains, 1-to-1, you'll find the greater number of dedication to the student is in the hills, because they live on a closer family circle net, so to say. Plains, everybody goes off in different directions. They travel, commute.
Social
for
hybrid here is
more close knit. That is why.
Okay. So one last question. You're very tired. You've traveled all day. So you're here today, I think, to attend the ICSC Fest tomorrow.
Yes, Crossroads Fest.
Crossroads Fest, and you are one of the prime movers behind starting this.
I'm not one of the prime movers. Movers were all fellow principals. I mooted an idea that
and
happily we all agreed upon.
And Dr. Graham Zomes was the first to host it when you were there.
Yes, that was in 2000, the Centenary Fest.
Yes. So do you really think this is a good concept? Because there is a general feeling that it disturbs students from the academic part.
There's always a sacrifice. To gain something, you have to give something. It's a question of time management.
Okay.
Some may look at it as a distraction, but I tell you, the opportunity that this forum, this platform gives to children, first in meeting each other on terms of mutual respect for each other. It's something that will not happen if they're secluded.
Okay.
Secondly, they come to realize their abilities, that some have lesser abilities than others. They come to, in your own school, you may be Tarzan, right? But on a common platform, you may not be.
You may be Kodak.
Maybe, right? So, that is why this teaches children to accept differences, that some are better than others. It resolves things, conflicts in their minds. It gives them opportunity to express their talent, their ability. And I tell you, students in our country, they are so full of talent because they are multilingual. They know more than 2 languages sometimes, 3 languages, 4 languages, they're multilingual. And if they're multilingual, they're multicultural in their thinking. Because to learn a language, you've got to learn the culture also.
True.
That it comes with it.
It comes.
So multicultural. So with children being like that, they are so full of talent, so full of ideas, and it expresses itself in many different ways. You know,
So-
and I think it's a great forum. It teaches life. It teaches life in an entertaining, educative way. That's it.
So the last thing, what would you like to tell all the students in Kalimpong or in the hills, all the students, the school heads, all the school teachers? One last message from you on camera to the students community, the teaching community in the hills.
Well, if the students, boys and girls, if you have to make it and make it really big, you've got to think big. Because without thinking big, you may have the greatest teacher, but you will never learn anything. It's only when you think big that you will be lifted on a higher plane by your teachers. But if you cannot think big, your teacher cannot lift you. So always keep this in mind, and you must remember, as a student, wherever you are, the teacher is your guide, is your guru, and unless you give that respect, you will never gain anything from that knowledge that the teacher gives you. Because the teacher not only gives you knowledge, the teacher gives you a slice of him or herself. The personality is infused in you. So if you're not willing to accept a teacher, you will be the loser in the end. So respect your teachers, have confidence in yourselves, and dream big. Because only when you dream big that you can achieve something.
So talking about dreams, sir, we also have a dream. Our dream is, after 2 years, after 3 years, when you come back again, the deputy in your designation disappears. So we want to see someone from Kalimpong. We consider you as Kalimpong.
Yeah, definitely.
We
I
want
too.
someone from Kalimpong to be the topmost man in the ICC courts. All the best wishes to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It all depends upon God. And yes, there is fate and one's work. Fate and the work that you do sometimes mixes magic. Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Sandip.